didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to you today because you're doing something quite extraordinary. I'm going to let you intro this and yourself in this a bit, but just if I could just mention that you're basically launching Australia's first independent browser, and it's almost like taking on big tech, and it's a phenomenal story. But at the same time, it's also something that's quite close to my heart in terms of protecting, our future online. So, David, talk to me about what is it, and what are you guys doing with Max, and how are you approaching this going forward?
First of all, thanks for having me on your show, Noel. It's a privilege to be with you on your first episode.
Yes.
And thanks very much for inviting us in. So hopefully, there'll be many, many more that we can be part of, and we'll certainly be tuning in as you keep tuning these out week by week. Thanks for framing Max in that way, because it's quite appropriate the way that you've put it together. Data privacy as a whole, whether it's B2B or B2C, is such a new industry in many ways. So when you do make inroads into this space, it's very difficult to properly understand what is it you're trying to achieve. As you can see, signs and banners and street signs all over the place telling you we take care of privacy or privacy is important, but they're empty statements. They don't mean anything. They mean different things to different people and to different companies and different products and platforms.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult sector to make inroads into. But effectively what we're doing is we've got to play in the B2B space, which is a corporate compliance play, which is very difficult, and we've paused that for a while. But more importantly, what we're doing with Max is we're trying to change the way that people go online. We're trying to move away from the standard practice of big tech monitoring us and controlling us. And we've got some really good ideas and really good progress on how we're going to flip that around and take on the way that we're told to behave when we go online.
Yeah, I think that's something I've noticed, and maybe you can get into this a bit more. But for me, I think it's you're bringing ethics and compliance where there isn't currently legislation, and that's an interesting position for me as a company, because I think companies, big tech in general, and theirs is shareholders and what can we do. Ethics is very second in their minds, whereas you're not taking that position. You really are taking the user first, and I'm sure you've got shareholders that matter, but ultimately your position on this is basically bringing something to solve the user's issue first, and that's how I feel on this. And I'd love you to talk about that a bit more, because just you're doing this, but doing this with Max, but ultimately why? I mean, you've got kids, you've got a family. Where did this come from?
So essentially, Max was born out of personal frustration, which I think is probably one of the best places to get your inspiration from. And it's one that I'm sure is shared by all of us, insofar as when you do go online, which is the centerpiece of our lives these days, especially after COVID.
Yeah, everything's there.
We live online, whether we like it or not.
My 10-year-old has his iPad, and that scares me. But then I came along, and I'm like, actually,
So what I was becoming increasingly frustrated with was when I do go online, I'm a creature of habit, professional, parent, all that sort of stuff. And I log in online in the mornings. I've got my screens and so forth, and I love to look at the news, read some articles, have a look at some general junk, which we all look at, and then go about my day. They're my general routines. And it was becoming more and more increasingly obvious to me that I wasn't deciding what I was looking at. I might have had the choice to click on some pages, but others were deciding what I was looking at based on my profiles.
Yeah.
And I was being bombarded with ads, and as I learned, as I was going more and more through pages, the activity was slowing down, the page loads were slowing down. And we've all been in those scenarios where you might have a conversation one-on-one with someone in what you think is a private environment, but then all of a sudden your feeds are full of ads relating to a conversation that you had with someone, a day ago. And it's that our lives are invaded and monitored and recorded to that degree.
Yeah. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah. And so Max was born from, we're going to flip this around. Yep. We're going to decide what we look at, when we look at it, under our terms, and we're going to stop other people, collecting and hoarding all this extremely private and personal, parts of our lives. That's essentially where Max is born.
Yeah, I want to just talk on that real quick. I don't want to interrupt you, but I've been on the browser, and I was shocked to see how you can actually see what it's blocking and how much it's blocking. And that's on someone that's I'm an SEO, I'm a tech, and I was shocked at because you think you block cookies, you block this, you block that. You think you are, but even as someone that's in tech, I was shocked at how much is being used. And you can see on the browser on the side, it tells you what it's blocking. That's quite interesting. That's amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, and I was really, really pleased that we're able to get that component up and running. And the other component, which I found quite aggravating, was that the companies that are watching us use our data to actually power up their monitoring devices, which are inserted onto your laptops and phones and desktops.
What do you mean?
So all of the trackers and the tracking material that gets downloaded onto our devices when we go online, when they're inserted onto our equipment, they need to be powered up to send material back to where the companies are based, essentially. Okay. So to actually send those details back to home base, for want of a better word, on what Noel's looking at, it needs data. So they're actually using your data to send your information back to them so they can use it for their benefit. And I just found that wildly arrogant.
Yeah, well, is that why Chrome browser is so resource heavy?
That's why they're all so resource heavy. And it's why it's crucial to block all these trackers. So for us on that little stats counter on your screen, it shows the amount of your data that we're able to save for you. Because especially if you're on your mobile device and you're going, why am I chewing up so much data? I mean, up to a third of it is you powering up their devices so they can commercially benefit from you.
That's unreal.
Astounding. And also as a result of that, because we're blocking all of that activity, page loads are just lightning fast. And you don't realize how slow your devices come because you're powering up their equipment every time you open a page, and it slows you down.
That's amazing. And so again, as a tech, I feel like I should know this stuff, but I didn't realize we were actually powering and they were using our data to power their processes. That's unreal.
Yes. It's just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, so you really are disrupting the space, right? I mean, and you got a team with you, and I really want to get into that piece on it, your company ethos and how everyone works. Talk to me a little bit about, how are you flipping the script? Because I mean, you're going to get a lot of pushback with what you're doing because it's not in a lot of people's interest other than the user. And then, I'll put that in two questions. And then what sort of struggles are you having? Whether it's bringing this stuff into place or whether it's just the struggle of putting a startup like this together.
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. And I could probably split that into two categories. There's the challenges that Max in its own right faces because of the technology we're trying to build. But of course, there's the challenges we face as a startup, which are really in some ways generic and in some ways really particular to what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think from a technology perspective, because we're doing it in such a way that no one else is doing it, I mean, we're effectively trying to make a way for you to become invisible when you go online. We're not there yet, but that's our challenge. And so there's a lot of websites that don't like us insofar as they're reliant on putting material onto your devices and monitoring you. So we've got to learn how to get around a lot of these components. So technically we've got a lot of challenges, but they're not insurmountable and they're not risks. It's us uncovering more opportunity as we go. And it tells us that we're doing the right thing because a lot of websites and businesses out there aren't letting us access their material. So that's a really pleasing development. From a startup perspective, the challenges are always there. And some of them, I would say, probably from a business governance perspective up front. There's always that never-ending financial uncertainty as you go through funding rounds and the runway versus profitability. Certainly when you're building, you've got to find that balance between, can I justify that expenditure versus that resources output? Are we really heading in the right direction? The runway versus profitability. You talk about shareholders, there's always that shareholder dilution, customer acquisition costs, it goes on and on and on. But from a personal perspective, there's always challenges that founders face, which again is possibly its own episode all in one. You know, there's always the isolation that comes with it. You always want to know if you're contributing in the best possible way. Am I actually the best person to be in their seat? You know, would someone else be doing a job better than me?
And thanks for that. That's not an honesty you often hear. And I think the whole imposter syndrome, and again, and we can get into that in another show, but I think that's a big part of me and what I like to talk about a fair bit is the imposter syndrome that comes along with doing these things, and not only pushing, legislation, tech and big tech, etc., but the pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And I mean, I don't think it gets much bigger than what you're doing, without trying to sound like I'm blowing smoke. You're taking it. There's got to be a massive, it would be for me, imposter syndrome going on, because who are you to do it? So genuinely kudos. That's amazing. So looking ahead, I mean, and I'd love to talk to you, but on that a bit more if you've got the time. But really what I want to talk about is a bit on what you feel the pillars are of online privacy and government legislation. Where and how should it step in? Your feeling on this, because you're obviously trying to get moving this forward. And how are you finding that in terms of government legislation and regulation that isn't in place at the moment, especially when you look at how, I mean, a simple example of going on ChatGPT, typing something, and then 3 days later, it knows what you typed 3 days earlier. So I know that's not ChatGPT and AI versus a browser, but Google's the same, and if not worse, even worse in some ways. How are you feeling from a regulations point of view and the government's position on this? Are you feeling supported, or is it quite difficult?
Look, that's such a broad questioning and conversation. I think we need to look at this from a business to business or corporate perspective versus a personal end user perspective.
Yeah.
With the corporate side, that's got such a long way to go, and it's such a complicated conversation because we're looking at trying to put governance over corporations that are being breached. There's a new one every single week. But we're talking about scenarios that are ripe for the picking because they've been building their technology stack for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's such a hybrid of, on-prem, off-prem, third-party providers versus in-house. And then there's licensing and SaaS. And then you've got employees after COVID that have got all their work on their devices and they've downloaded all different apps that they haven't, so there's just this patchwork of compliance landmines. So that's got a long way to go. But certainly from a personal perspective, I think the onus has to be on the person. We can't continually look to authority to put governance and compliance on what we're doing. I mean, we must use better awareness and have an understanding of how are we interacting with the online activity. And what are our preferences and what do we deem to be acceptable and not acceptable? And people need to go, okay, if I'm going online, what's actually happening? Who's actually watching me? At what expense is it occurring? It's a free experience, but at the end of the day, nothing's really for free.
Yeah.
Now, the trade-off for me looking at these websites is they take my data and then they on-sell it and then they create customized experiences.
Yeah.
So look at it in that sense, I think is probably the best way to
yeah. So I mean, and I like that position. Take responsibility for yourself. Your situation might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And I like that. Do you think in that then there needs to be an education piece? Because I don't think a lot of people are aware of how much they're putting out there sometimes. So I think if there was more awareness to this, a lot of people would be a little bit more worried. I mean, I want to talk to you about fear and risk, which is two different things, especially in terms of AR. But how do you feel on that? I mean, is education important, and is it there's a way of getting that out there to help people understand? Is that something that's on your list for Max in terms of what you could roll out?
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. But I think from an education perspective, you need to offer alternatives first. I'd love to be standing out there and working with communities and demographics, and helping them understand, what are they trading off for what's perceived to be free experiences. But I think it's relevant to have alternatives at the same time. So as Max grows and our penetration out there in the market grows, absolutely want to be out there teaching people and being an advocate for have great awareness of what people are taking from you, and have a great awareness of how it's impacting you, and let people determine for themselves and get a better understanding, because the standard model is big tech own the internet, and they own that position, and we need to change that.
So, I mean, that was a bit of a loaded question, because I do know that you are doing a lot with digital nomads, and obviously the VPN itself that you offer is a big part of that education piece and offering that support to those people. I don't know if you want to talk around that in terms of the digital nomad. I mean, obviously we're here at Flowspace, and I mean, digital nomad these days is anyone from the iconic digital nomad right through to a CEO that just works from home or has a laptop as remote. I know that's a big part of your first steps in terms of rolling Max out is professionals and digital nomads. Is that something you want to talk more around?
Yeah, it's actually a really pleasing place for us to be right now. It's really self-satisfying in that, you know, you build things, you've got all of your outputs in place, and you've got all your various outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And then if you get that right, you hope that there are some benefits for you at the end of all that. And for us, the benefits are that we get people actually gaining satisfaction out of using Max, or they see benefit in using Max. So we didn't actually build Max to go after a certain demographic. We built it because we passionately believe in it. So it's really satisfying to learn that there are certain demographics out there that do find value in what it is that we're trying to bring forward. And certainly remote teams just fits absolutely squarely right in the middle of who we're trying to interact with. It's whether it's people that are working from home, it's whether people that are working, you know, in co-locations such as your office.
Yeah.
But the digital nomad, it's such an impressive person. I mean, I wish I was in my 20s again, and I absolutely guarantee you I'd be a digital nomad.
Yeah, I wish I'd found it sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I just instantly fell in love with the concept of a digital nomad. I mean, surfing half the week in Bali and then sitting in a coffee shop for the other half of the week on the laptop. I mean, I love that. That's just brilliant.
Well, isn't it? Not just live to work.
Just, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm really envious of that, and the fact that we may be having a role to play in this new culture, this new workforce going forward, is incredibly satisfying for us, and it's just exactly what we built Max for.
Yeah, and it's
really good.
It's. I know it wasn't your initial focus, but it is actually really easy to adopt, and it makes sense. It's almost as if you did build it for the digital nomad in some ways, because not everyone has a place like for example us at Flowspace, where it is managed and you do have that firewall, everything in place. Not everyone has that, but when they're working for the likes of a coffee shop from overseas, that VPN means, you know, they are protected. I don't think people understand the importance of a VPN just even in your own home, and especially these days. So it's actually quite easy to adopt in that sense, but I suppose it's just awareness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely awareness, and it's about getting the messaging right. And as you know, with, you know, the younger generations, because they were raised in an environment of instant access to technology, attention spans are lesser than what they used to be, and getting access to that sort of generation is really difficult, you know, because we move in such short cycles. So it's really nice to know that if you are getting their attention, you're doing it for a good reason. Yeah. And they're actually interested in going, okay, I'll give you 10 seconds of my time. Okay, what are you going to do? Oh, that's what you're going to do. Okay, yeah, I could probably jump in on that and see how that goes for a little while. So it's pleasing to know that if we are trying to use education and we are trying to use brand awareness, that we've got a captured market, and possibly they're going to jump onto what it is that we're.
Yeah. I want to ask you on something, and I know time's close, so just shout as soon as you have to jump off. But I want to talk to you about something I watched on another interview you had, and it's something that's often come up with me in terms of especially with AR these days, versus actual risk. You know, worrying about something versus there actually being that risk. How, you know, where do you see us on this at the moment in terms of everything that's going on? How much of it is really just fear and our worry? Because I mean, AR, and I'm kind of leaning very hard towards AR here, and I've seen AR compared to the atom bomb, in the sense that when the atom bomb first came out, everybody was like, the world's going to end, everyone's going to get bombs, we're going to bomb everybody, and everyone's gone. Whereas as soon as things came in, the atom bomb, people started to relax a bit, and a lot of that was fear. It had the potential. A lot of that was fear. In terms of AR in my thinking is kind of like that right now. There's a lot of it that is just fear, because there's theories that AR can never get smarter than humans because it's created by humans. And then there's the other end of things, and that AR might want to take over the world. I know it's a big, broad question, but I just love your feedback on that, because I think it's in a lot of people's minds right now in terms of AR and how much is fear and how much is really facts, or what's your take on that?
It's a really interesting question, and I'm glad you raised it in that sort of sense. First and foremost, I think probably the best way to do this is keep it really simple, and it is fear. There is such a huge fear factor being peddled out there, and have a look at the source where a lot of this fear is coming from. It's generally news channels and CEOs with very high profiles that love to peddle products.
Yep.
But I think it's really important for us to understand that AI has been around for a really long time. If you think about what AI stands for, it's just automated intelligence, or some sort of automation assistance. So if you think about it, aeroplanes with Autoland and autopilots, I mean, that's a form of AI, and that's been around since the 70s. If you think about the little robots that spin around on their floors at home, and they map out the boundaries, and they've got a mop and drying, that's all AI, right? So I think we've got to keep it in perspective, in that AI has been with us for a long time. It's just gradually growing. I think it's just now become very topical in news cycles, because people are very interested to understand, is it going to take over our lives, or is it going to replace my jobs? And it will always continue to grow. It's technology. Technology grows and takes over our lives. It's just AI seems to be the flavour of the year, for want of a better word. And I don't think we should be threatened by it. I think we should push that fear factor to the side and just slow down. And if you're using it from a business, understand the governance of AI first, before you then go, okay, well, how do we bring AI tools into our business?
Yeah.
If you're a business and you want to bring AI in, well, how about you understand what does that mean for your business first, and how are you going to handle it? Are your employees using AI? If they are, how? Adopt some governance, train people up, and create a governance board. Like, put some controls around it, so you're ready to receive AI when it does come your way. It's not that complicated. And if you're an individual and you want to use it for your day-to-day lives, well, have a look in there and see what's on offer. What do you want? Do you want it to write emails for you? Do you want it to make payments for you? Do you want it to organise your calendar? All those things are fine. And just research what's out there and how to make it work best for you. And if you're an employee and you can see that AI could possibly be part of your role going forward, don't treat it as a threat, treat it as an opportunity. So research it and find out how it could actually come into your role, and take ownership and go to your management and say, hey, I can see this is coming my way. I want to be an advocate. I want to be a leader. I want to be at the front of this business. Can you invest in me, and I'll help do this, and we'll go forward and we'll put it into, what I mean? So it's going to be there to help us. Like, let's not be scared by this thing.
Yeah. So adopt with governance. That's the message.
Yeah, adopt with governance. AI has governance, just like everything else.
We just need to make sure that we're doing that and looking after ourselves and how we're using it, and that we're not exploiting ourselves and those around us. So I don't want to get into that too deep, because I think that's an area that I would get confused in terms of governance of an AI and a big company. But I appreciate you talking about on the fear versus facts, because I think that for me that's a bit of an eye opener. I'm an SEO, and AI it's getting more and more apparent that there's certain jobs that are falling away because of that. But I think we have to adopt, and my position on it is that make sure it's part of your everyday life, and it's those of us that learn how to use AI in a smart way, rather than making us more efficient, rather than making us lazy. And that's my position on it. There's lots of ways AI can make us lazy, but for me, it's using it to make us more efficient, more productive, and definitely better, professionals.
Absolutely.
I know you've got to get off, but I just want to touch base. If people are going to kick off and they want to try Max, what do they need to do? And, what message do you have for them with signing up with Max?
Look, I think if people want to use Max, it's important to understand, what are they trying to achieve. If they're just looking for another app on their phone because it's fun to download something while you're on the bus on the way to work because you don't want to do anything else, well then, Max is Max and it's there with all your other apps. It's probably not going to do much for you. But if you actually have a passion for becoming invisible when you go online, flipping the script where you control what you do when you go online, what you look at, and you want to stop people invading your own personal life, well then download Max. Download Max we're working to help you become invisible when you go online. Yep. We've also included a VPN in there, which no one else has done, free of charge. So not only can you browse online, you can also go online with a VPN free of charge. That's what we're trying to bring to people. So you simply download it from our website. It's just another app. The VPN's integrated into the browser. So we've deliberately made this as simple and as seamless as possible for you to be online and to function how we think you should be able to function. So don't be threatened by it. It's not complicated. It's just a simple app that's going to help you achieve what we hope you want to achieve.
That's awesome. And it's amazing. I generally, it's great to talk to a company that I feel that has an ethics and an ethos that aligns so strongly with a lot of what I'm trying to achieve in life. So I appreciate the time, David. I really do. It's been a massive, it's genuinely been an honor to have a chat to you today. And I appreciate you being our first one on our podcast, especially in this echoey room. But I hope to chat to you again soon. I'd really like to pick up a bit more and dig into those little ones we didn't have enough time for today. But is there any final words, or should we call it a day? And thank you for your time.
Yeah, look, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been an absolute privilege and an honour. I'd love to get into some more episodes with you on some startup, based conversations.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's so much content in that space, and I've been in this for nearly 8 years now, and I'd love to share some of my findings with some people out there. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you. And looking forward to chatting again soon. Thanks, Noel.
Thank you, Matt. And yes, I'd love to chat and get your insights on, how you've gone through business over the years. So we'll definitely make that. We'll put a pin in that, and we'll get onto that in some more episodes. I definitely will hold you to that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Fantastic, David. Thank you so much for your time.
See you later. Yeah, Nudge.
I think recording's still running, but